Hi everyone, welcome to StudioJake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. So we've got three big topics we're going to talk about today. Dwayne Johnson confirms that Black Adam starts shooting this summer. Christian Bale, his mysterious secret role, it's not totally revealed, but we have a clue. And finally, Family Guy, of all shows, decides to make fun of sports activism. So if you're interested in that, be sure to like this video, share it out. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, ring that little bell so you get all the notifications, because YouTube curates your subscription feed for some reason instead of showing everything in chronological order. So you'll definitely want to ring that little bell, turn on all notifications. That way you get notifications for when I do a show. And if you're on Facebook, like the video, share it with your aunts, uncles who like to rail against politics. Give them a break from that, especially with this episode. And be sure to like the page and turn on all notifications there. With all that in mind, sit back, relax, and welcome to Studio Jake. For those of you unfamiliar with Black Adam, he is an antagonist of Shazam, and of course, Shazam came out last year with Zachary Levi playing Shazam, and Black Adam is a lot different than before. So he was, of course, implied to exist in Shazam. Basically, if you don't remember at the beginning of the movie when the wizard summons Billy Batson to this, to the magical realm, he tells the story about a former champion who wiped out the Council of Eternity, quote, quote, and that is where that power comes from. So that is pretty much his thing now. Prior to the New 52, Black Adam was just kind of a straightforward villain. If you hear crashes in the background, I'm going to go ahead and apologize. I guess it's garbage day in my neighborhood, and instead of doing everything subtly, the city of Los Angeles has to do everything loud and big so they know you're there. So if you hear crashes, that's the dumpster and the truck carrying it away. So anyway, Black Adam is uh, but like I said, prior to the New 52, he was just a straightforward villain. He would get, and he seemed to get darker and darker and darker. And I think one of the last storylines prior to the New 52 is like it kind of implies that he becomes a cannibal, which I think is really interesting. So Shazam, of course, his power base is very similar to Superman, except, his powers are based in magic, and that's why in the comic books he can actually fight Superman, because everyone thinks kryptonite is Superman's only weakness. That's not true. Alien technology can hurt Superman depending on its power level, and of course, magic can hurt Superman because Kryptonians don't have any concept for magic. And in fact, it's shown that Hawkman and Hawkwoman, their weapons, not themselves, they're not powerful enough, but their weapons can hurt Superman because the Thanagarians are, their power base is based in a combination of science and magic. So that's all canon in pre-crisis, post-crisis, and in New 52, or in the DC Rebirth. So anyway, back to Black Adam. He is just as strong as Superman. In fact, I believe it's in the DC Universe Online video. It shows that he's powerful enough to defeat Superman, because not necessarily because of his strength, but because he's willing to do things Superman's not willing to do. So except for Shazam, who's based in the Greek pantheon, he's based in the Egyptian pantheon. So he has the stamina of Shu, the swiftness of Hiru, the strength of Amon, the wisdom of Zehuti, the power of Aton, and the courage of Mahan. Now, he's really on par with Billy Batson as Shazam. And so I was very excited when they announced Dwayne Johnson was going to play him because he is a truly incredibly powerful adversary. And Dwayne Johnson shared on Instagram a photo of himself where he's like bench pressing and he's doing this standing flex with the bar and all this and he writes the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change. Training and prep for hashtag Black Adam has been a grind, but this passion project outweighs the sacrifices. Truth, justice, and the Black Adam way. Hashtag eye for an eye. Hashtag anti-hero. Hashtag Black Adam. And then he tagged the photographer. And then he revealed shooting begins this summer. So they're basically he's basically making this big time announcement that the film begins. And this is amazing because he has been tied to the project for 10 years. It was part of one of the original slates of films to come out. And one thing that I should note is in the original DCEU, the how they were ranking the films was that they were going to do these projects like this, and this was actually even before they finally fired Zack Snyder. Was they had like this big universe set up. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with Black Adam being anti-hero. Like I said, that was prior to the New 52. He was getting darker and darker and darker. However, when the New 52 happened and into the DC Rebirth, they changed him into more of an anti-hero, where he's just he's the ruler of a kingdom. So kind of like Doctor Doom, he has diplomatic immunity, and he's very strong-willed, incredibly powerful, and I think it's great that Dwayne Johnson was cast as him. I think that he'll do a fantastic job. I'm it's I'm not sure if Zachary Levi is going to appear in this movie or if it's just going to focus on Black Adam. I thought the DCEU was over, especially after the disaster that was Birds of Prey. But it seems like maybe they're going forward with a few of these films, and because they at first they were saying the Batman, which stars Robert Pattinson, it wasn't going to be part of the DCEU, but now people are like, oh well, maybe it will be. Well, I don't know, maybe it will be. We'll just have to wait and see. But I think what they should do is use Shazam as a bounce off port, because technically it could reboot the DCEU. Technically speaking, of course. And even Wonder Woman 1984, this is what I didn't get was they wanted to do Flashpoint, and I wouldn't have done Flashpoint. I would have done an adaptation of it, but I would have made Wonder Woman the focus of that because Wonder Woman has been their most successful hero. That's just my opinion. We'll just have to wait and see what happens, but I don't know why they're making this a part of the DCEU. They should have just made it a part of Shazam. I think DC, for the time being at least, should go back to just doing standalone films and then revisit once they have someone who can actually give a good vision, who's not a hack director to oversee it. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Nonetheless, even though I'm definitely negative toward the DCEU, with a couple of exceptions, handful of exceptions, I do think Dwayne Johnson is perfect for the role of Black Adam, and I look forward to seeing this film. Glad it's finally started to film. It has been rumored for months, I mean months, that Christian Bale was jumping ship with the DC after how Warner Brothers mistreated him following the Dark Knight trilogy and jumping into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, no one really knew for sure, but people had seen him and had heard that he was in talks with Marvel to appear in Thor: Love and Thunder, which is Thor 4. And it seems like this has now been confirmed that not only is he going to be in the film, but that he's going to play a villain. According to BGR.com, Tessa Thompson, who plays Valkyrie in Thor Ragnarok and in Avengers Endgame. She says some familiar faces, some new people into the mix. Christian Bale is going to play our villain, which is going to be fantastic. And of course, a few people I've talked to who are also comic book fans, they're a little disappointed because they always hope that somehow Warner Brothers would wake up from their waking nightmare and let Christian Bale play Batman again. I don't think that's ever going to happen. These movie companies are incredibly stubborn, and right now there's a strong in at least Warner Brothers and in Star Wars, not really so much in the MCU, but definitely in Lucasfilms and in Warner Brothers or DC Entertainment, whatever, however you want to pin it. There's definitely like almost a hatred of the fans. I've talked about this a little bit in other episodes, so I don't think we'll ever see Christian Bale returning as Batman. I just don't see it happening. But anyway, back to Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm not excited about this film. I kind of thought that the Thor story arc should have ended with Avengers Endgame, and if they wanted him to appear in one more film, it should have been with Guardians of the Galaxy. Just let him be a part of that, and then maybe, I hate to say this, but never see him again. But they are bringing him back for Thor: Love and Thunder, and Chris Hemsworth will play Thor, and it's supposedly going to have Natalie Portman return as Jane Foster, and she's going to be able to lift Mjolnir, which is interesting because Mjolnir got destroyed. It returned in Avengers Endgame, but it got returned back. It got, because they pulled it out of time. It got returned, so I'm really curious how they're going to pull that off. Of course, maybe with all this dimension hopping, that's how they'll bring it back in a way I actually don't know. Now, since we know Christian Bale is playing the villain, it's worth asking who is he going to play. So I actually have three ideas because we have seen in Thor, we've seen Malefic the Accursed and his lackeys. So I don't think it's going to be a dark elf. We have seen Loki, of course, and we all know it's not going to be Loki. Loki in the main line is dead at least, but I think he'll probably return via the events of Avengers Endgame and the Loki miniseries, which I'm a little disappointed in because I think his death in Avengers Infinity War was very profound and it shapes you. So now the TV show I don't really care that much because they can always say, oh, it's part of the multiverse, it's in a different dimension. But putting it in the main universe, I actually hope they don't do that. I hope that they keep him in his own little thing, basically. And we know it's Lorelai is not going to be the villain because she was the villain in an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which featured Lady Sif as a character. Now, this is interesting because they said, because Tessa Thompson said familiar faces, and Lady Sif was not seen in Thor Ragnarok or Avengers Endgame. All the focus was put on Valkyrie. So I'm curious if she's going to return somehow. We'll have to wait and see. Now, anyway, back to my three villains that I think Christian Bale is going to play. I think it's possible he's going to play Ares. Now, Ares is in the DC universe. If for people who have seen Wonder Woman, he was who Wonder Woman was looking for in the film. Now, in the Marvel universe, the the Greek pantheon and obviously the Asgardians, even though they exist in a different dimension and they're sort of aliens, not really gods, although they kind of proclaim themselves to be gods just because they're so powerful. It's they do the same thing with the Greek pantheon, except and Hercules, in fact, is a character. He is an Avenger for a while, and he and Thor have this constant competition going on, and Ares is the villain. Now, Ares has gone back and forth. Sometimes he's an anti-hero, sometimes he's a straight villain, and he's angry because he thinks the Greek pantheon or Olympus should be worshipped, and so that's why he initially becomes a villain. And in fact, in the Dark Avengers, when Norman Osborn takes over Shield and creates his own brand of Avengers, Ares is among them, and they actually have a battle with Thor at some point. It's very interesting. I think that could be a possibility. I'm hesitant to say that he's going to be some sort of alien, so I think they're going to see his face, and that's what leads me to Ares because he has a very human face. Next up, I think there's a possibility it might be Crusader. I'm not really sure if if this is going to be true, but I just wouldn't put it past it because even especially in these anti-Christian times, it just wouldn't surprise me if they would go this route. But there's a character named Arthur Blackwood, and he's the Crusader. Now there have been other Marvel superheroes with this name. It gets kind of eye rollish at some point, and but basically. Arthur Blackwood was a seminary student. He gets expelled and he goes to his family home in England. They have this crypt, and while he's there, he has this vision from God, and it's all his ancestors telling him that they should fight paganism and godlessness in modern society. And for some reason, he thinks that means he should attack Thor. So he gets like this armor that has these powers and goes and fights Thor, and Thor shatters his sword and forcing him to retreat. And I think he comes back a couple of more times just to kind of annoy Thor and whatnot. It's very, like I said, I think this is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, but I wouldn't put it past them. Like I said, these are anti-Christian times. We see anti-Christian propaganda all over the place, even just in regular films. They'll get a dig when it doesn't make sense, but uh, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I could be completely I could be completely wrong about that. Now, my last one, and this is this one is I think how they could introduce like other characters, but there's a character named Grodd. Now, Grog looks alien. He looks a lot like Ronan the Destroyer, or excuse me, Ronan the Accuser. He looks a lot like him, but just wears different. He's from a race called the Heliopolitan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he and Thor often meet, and it is said, and he often tries to kill Thor, and he's been kind of a recurring villain. He's incredibly powerful, and really, they kind of show the only reason Thor is able to beat Grog is because of Thor's hammer. Now, I would like to, in fact, I believe he's so powerful, in fact, the that Thor needed the help of Captain America and Black Knight to defeat him. Like that's how powerful he is. So he would be an interesting. Like I said, he does have an alien appearance, so I could be wrong about this. Like I said, I don't think they're going to cast Christian Bale and then put him in a ton of makeup. I think they kind of save those for lesser known actors, but I could be wrong. Grog would be interesting to introduce just because he would be different, um, a very different antagonist to Thor, and also he'd be a good challenge if they want to bring in Lady Thor. I personally, I don't know how they're going to do that. Lady Thor was one of the most unpopular comic book characters when she premiered. Sales of Thor comics and even Avengers comics, where she was featured very prominently, dropped. And again, it's not because she was a woman, it's because Thor lost his ability to hold Mjolnir, and so he uses an axe, but instead of going by Thor, he went by Odin's son, which was stupid. What I don't get is, so there's another hammer in the DC universe that you can only wield if you have the power of Thor as well, and it's Thunderstrike. And he's a male character. Now, I don't have a problem with Jane Foster being worthy to lift Mjolnir. My problem is that she became Thor. I would just like to see her have her own identity, or Thunderstrike, because Thunderstrike is kind of a minor character. He's not has that doesn't have that strong connection. He was, in fact, he only really was popular while he was posing as Thor, because everyone thought there was this thing where Thor was thought to be dead, and so this guy picked up the hammer, but he basically turned into Thor. It was like Thor overtook his identity. So, and he resembled Thor a great deal. So, um, I would like to see Jane Foster do something like that, where instead of replacing them with these characters, they give these female characters their own identity. I just think it makes way more sense in that regard. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I just think it's kind of funny. So, Family Guy, funny show sometimes. They really hate Christians, but they are equal opportunity offenders. They go after feminists, they go after transgenders. They did this really hilarious, it's to me, to this day, it's my favorite episode with OJ Simpson. And now I don't watch it. I'm not a regular watcher. When I was in college, I watched a little bit more. I feel like it's kind of gone the way of The Simpsons, where it's jumping the shark a lot. But however, a recent episode I heard about via newsbusters.org, and I just had to laugh. So I'm going to read part of the article. This is Elise Earhard writing for Newsbusters. She writes, Fox's Family Guy finds way to offend both conservatives and liberals in its quest for laughs. The jokes can either be a hard hit or miss depending on the target. The television season has seen the show mock many groups from feminists to transgenders to devout religious believers. This week in the episode The Movement on March 8th, it hilariously parodied Colin Kaepernick's fame by turning Peter Griffin into an accidental hero of racial equality. During a Quahog minor league baseball game, Peter Griffin gets down on one knee during the national anthem while he's trying to hold back diarrhea. To his surprise, the moment gets misinterpreted. And then it quotes from the TV show, our top story tonight, local baseball coach Peter Griffin took a knee during the national anthem day, joining the fight for equality. Quaboag Nightly news anchor Tom Tucker announces, Dad, check it out. You're on the news for taking a knee during the anthem. They called you a hero and an activist, Peter's son Chris tells him. A hero? That's no doubt Peter. Yeah, because you took a knee to support the fight against police brutality, Meg says. And then it just goes from there. Peter, of course, is a terrible human being, so he tries to milk this celebrity status, and to the point where he even gets an endorsement from Nike, and they give him a lot of money to star in their commercial. And I just thought it was funny. And I'm really surprised because kneeling during the national anthem has suddenly become a like a sacred cow, even though it's the most cowardly and ridiculous thing you can do. It's not brave at all. I don't know why taking a knee to insult your country is brave. It's very cowardly, um, and it's nothing for but attention grabbing. There are other ways to show how you care about a cause than insulting veterans and our country. And I think it's kind of interesting that Family Guy took this on, because even Bill Burr, who is not a woke comedian, but even he was kind of like, oh well, he just did it just to do this, and like, okay, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. But anyway, so it's funny. I just thought it would be kind of a funny aside to talk about. I wish I could show you a clip, but YouTube will then cancel me, so that's not going to happen. That's all the time I have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Parler. They're all at Real Jacob Airy. No tricks, no periods, no dashes, nothing. Follow me on all of those platforms. You can find me on Facebook, author Jacob Airy. YouTube is Studio Jake. And of course, you can find my blog, jacobairy.blog. Don't forget to pick up your copy of my novel, The Seven Royals, All Good Things, available on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com, Apple Books, and you can download it directly from my publisher or buy a paperback copy at booklocker.com. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.